This next question asks my opinion on toxic relationships. Toxic relationships, toxic dating relationships, toxic family relationships, and even toxic friendships. To begin, we live in this vein of time where the word toxic in itself has become toxic. It's sometimes overused, over dramatized. But even as I sit here, I think it's one of the most appropriate words used to describe a relationship between people that reconstructs in a negative way the individual's image of themselves, the individual's feeling of worthiness, the individual's image of even being able to contribute positively to society. I think toxic is a very appropriate word to describe that kind of relationship. And so my opinion on toxic relationships doesn't vary, but I do accept that there are so many nuances, so many subtleties, so many varieties of toxicity that can be touched on. So I'll only speak to the ones in question. When it comes to romantic relationships, I believe that if the individuals involved aren't as whole as they could possibly be, or aren't as self-actualized as they could possibly be at the moment of the relationship, then the relationship itself is only as strong as the individual and collective mental and emotional capacity of the couple. I think this is where toxicity in romance can be born. We receive external messages about being youthful and finding long-lasting love, neglecting to impart the understanding that being youthful also means being full of folly, full of mischief, full of questions and experiments. And so we follow these social images that tell us to pair up very young and get in these very intense relationships, and then we're surprised, we're shocked, baffled when those very young relationships aren't successful, when they turn toxic. Your mate in your relationship is only strong enough to support you as he or she is strong enough to support themselves. Oftentimes we enter relationships with expectations of others that haven't been properly vetted. These expectations may not be realistic. They may not be aligned with the other person's desires. They may not even be aligned to that person's capacity to give and love in that way. And yet we press forward, we endure, we suffer through sometimes because there's this social pressure, this overtly stated understanding that you're supposed to find a mate in your youth, settle with this one person, and make a life, have success. And so because there is this press, because there is this social expectation to enter relationships young when we're not fully developed, toxicity is a byproduct. But we're not encouraged to clean up the toxicity. We're not encouraged to remedy it as much as sometimes, especially for women, we are encouraged to endure. I disagree with that encouragement. I know now at middle age of life that when you are uncomfortable, you have to stop and adjust. You don't just keep pushing through, you stop and adjust. And so again, in romantic relationships, you have toxicity that exists because we also individually and collectively as a couple don't have communication strategies. We don't have coping mechanisms that help us to avoid handling disagreements in a toxic way. Of course, the remedy to all toxic relationships is to just cease and desist, which of course is always a lot easier said than done. But it has to happen for your own sanity, for your own personal self-image and self-worth. Because remember, my personal definition of the toxic relationship is that one that has that potential to really get into your core and change you in a negative way. We also live in this social media heavy scene where it is an expectation that we as individuals post our emotions, our status, our vacations, our outfit of the day, right? Our mood for the day. And so naturally these same behaviors lend to our relationships. We post our boyfriends, our girlfriends, our significant others. We post significant events in our relationships, and this becomes, right, entertainment for some, a daily ticker tape and update for others of what's happening in your love life. And of course, I believe that you should celebrate and you should win openly. But again, we're talking about toxicity. And so you have this relationship that's born of people who may not be individually whole enough to have the scope of the relationship they're trying to have. And then you couple that with social media and you have people who post some of the most inappropriate things at inappropriate times because we've not been taught appropriately how to communicate, and social media is always there. And so, if I'm the kind of person who needs an audience, who needs drama, who needs to feel like someone really cares about me, then I'll put these woes for the world to see. Again, we're talking about toxicity and toxic relationships.